Hello there! So today I'm here to bring you an anime movie review! The other day I saw Tenki no Ko, or Weathering with You, which is Makoto Shinkai's new film. You may have heard the name Makoto Shinkai in connection with the movie Your Name, or Kimi no Na wa, because it's the same guy. He's the director of Your Name, and Weathering with You is his new film. Weathering with You was released in Japan last year, but it has finally made its way to cinemas in the US. I don't know if it's been anywhere else in the world. I'm just aware of its US release. I saw this movie on the 15th of January. It was like a special preview screening through like Fathom Events or something like that, and then after the two preview screenings, then it's going to be like released at least like semi-widely in the US. Really the only difference between the regular movie and the preview screening was that there was like an interview with Makoto Shinkai at the end. So yeah, this is my review for Weathering with You. First off, I do want to say it has been a very long time since I have had a perfectly pleasant experience in a movie theater. This is mostly due to people talking. This is my #1 pet peeve. Like, if you talk during a movie, I will kill you. I have a friend that I went to go see a movie with, and he talked through the whole thing. I am never seeing a movie with him ever again. So the two guys next to me like were just making comments throughout the movie. One, it wasn't funny, and two, it was very disruptive. I already had like not a great seat. I kind of like took too much time to buy my tickets, so I was like second row, like off in the corner, so my neck hurt the whole time, and then I had these two jokers next to me talking the whole time, and I can't stand it. Please, the movie theater is not your living room. They were so disruptive. Like, I don't know if anybody else in the theater heard them, but I did, and they were like talking through like the emotional climax of the movie, and they prevented my tears. Like, I was about to cry, but then they started talking and they robbed me of my tears. They robbed me of my emotion, and I'm so upset. So just a PSA, if you go to the movies, shut up. So yeah, that aside, great movie. I loved it, so let's talk about it. Weathering You is set in modern day Tokyo, and it is raining all of the time. They're experiencing record amounts of rain, and it's like every single day it's raining. Like, Japan has a rainy season, but this is like rainy season times like 4,000. So the story follows a teenage runaway Hadoka, and he has run away from his suffocating hometown. He's arrived to make a new life in Tokyo, and after he gets a job at a very small publishing company, like they publish like weird things like UFO sightings and aliens and conspiracy theories, that sort of thing. So he gets a job there, and then shortly after that he meets this girl Hina, who is a girl who appears to be able to control the weather. The two strike up a relationship, and they kind of uncover the mystery behind Hina being an actual sunshine girl, so a girl who can actually bring the sun out from the rain. So I want to say right off the bat, I loved this movie. It was so good. It was beautifully animated. There was so much detail. The music was great. The story was wonderful and emotional, and it had a lot of like really great themes and kind of like commentary to it, and I loved it so much. This review is going to be as spoiler free as possible. I'm going to try not to go into super specific stuff, but there is a lot of things that I want to talk about that could be construed as spoiler. I don't know. Honestly, I feel like I am not giving away anything I'm not giving away anything about this movie from this review. So first off, we're going to talk about the animation and sort of the atmosphere of this movie. Weathering with You is a traditional 2D animated style movie. I don't think there is any or very much CGI in this movie. I feel like maybe there are a few places where they used CGI to like assist with the animation, maybe some sort of more like sweeping camera movements, that sort of thing, but it is primarily a traditionally 2D drawn animated movie. Makoto Shinkai movies have such a distinct style. Much like Studio Ghibli, you can tell that a Makoto Shinkai movie is a Makoto Shinkai movie. Two things that kind of give away that it is a Shinkai movie is the amount of detail and realism in the movie and the kind of use of light and color in the movie. A lot of his movies tend to be sort of fantastical in nature. A lot of this is illustrated through his like use of light. It sort of has like a magical realism element to his films. I really love the way that Makoto Shinkai kind of colors or depicts light. It's not just like oranges and yellows, he mixes other colors in there. He mixes blues and pinks and purples in with his light, and that sort of gives it like this like otherworldly magical sort of feeling, which oftentimes ties in with the plot or sort of the themes of the film. A lot of this movie takes place while it is raining, so light and sunshine is very important to kind of the story of this movie. A lot of the times when he uses the kind of like pinks and blues and purple tones of light is when it's kind of depicting more of the magical or like fabulistic sort of elements to the rain. It really sets the tone and brings out a super magical quality in his works. So I think he really excels at animating and depicting light. Another thing about this movie, even though it is a like very magical sort of story, is that it is very much rooted in realism. And by realism I mean like its setting. So this movie is set in Tokyo, and it's set in sort of modern Tokyo. You can kind of take it as like present day or like very near future Tokyo. All of the places in this movie are like real, and you can tell they're real, and it's like if you're familiar with Tokyo then you know exactly where it is. If you look at this movie and you know any part of Tokyo, you can be like, oh, I know exactly where that is. For example, there's a portion of this movie where the characters are in Odaiba, which is my personal favorite part of Tokyo. The second they showed up there, I was like, oh, I know exactly where that is. I mean, personally, I've only spent a week in Tokyo. I spent most of my time semester abroad in Japan in Osaka, so I visited Tokyo, but still, like, if you're familiar with Tokyo in any sort of sense, even from pictures, you can tell like that he has animated an actual city. Additionally, there's another thing in this movie that I appreciated, really liked, noticed, that kind of added to the realness of the film. So obviously with a big city you're going to see lots of advertisements and brands and like stores and shops and things like that, and there were no fake brands or stores or advertisements, at least that I could see. It almost seemed like there was an excess of them, which made me think maybe there was some sort of like maybe sponsorship areas going on, but I'm not 100% sure. I haven't really read much about the movie because I didn't want to influence any of my opinions by reviews, but yeah, I don't know if there's any sort of like sponsorship thing going on, but because there were some that were like very prominent in here, but like didn't really take away anything. It was just something that I noticed and wondered about. But like you'll see real brands, so you'll see like the characters actually using Yahoo Japan, which is like very popular in Japan. You'll see like actual convenience stores like Lawson, and so a lot of the times in anime you will see things that are supposed to be other things. So instead of a McDonald's you may see a like Whackdonald's. Turn the M upside down to kind of like avoid any sort of like, I don't know, issue or something like that, but everything was very real. Even though it was an animated film, it really felt like it was shot in real life. So it was like a movie had been shot in live action and then animated exactly how it was shot. You'd see all those advertisements and stores and shops and like convenience stores like in the background of the film. They would just be part of the setting. There was nothing like that was like weird and distracting. It was just like very much rooted in real life, and I really liked that sort of, I guess, contrast between this very real animated film and all of the magic that is in this story. The thing that goes along with the atmosphere was the music. So Makoto Shinkai's last movie, Your Name, the music was composed by a pop group called Radwimps, and again they have worked with Shinkai for this film to create the music. They created two types of music. Obviously they composed like cinematic kind of atmospheric music, and then there's also like kind of like theme songs, like songs with words in it, and those are interspersed throughout the movie, and they have specific meanings ingrained in the story. I felt like the music was very, very well done. It's very well ingrained. It feels like it is part of the film, and it feels like it is part of the story, and it's not something that was kind of like tacked on later. It's very much ingrained in the story and the themes of the film. One thing that I learned from the little featurette thing with Shinkai afterwards is that this like the music being ingrained in the themes of the film was very much intentional. So apparently after Shinkai wrote the script for this movie, he sent it off to the lead singer of Radwimps, Yojiro, I think is his name, and then after Yojiro read the script, he composed 2 songs and sent them back to Shinkai. And this was all before like it was really set in stone that they were going to actually make this movie. He had just written the script and like sent it to his friend to read. So like those songs were inspired by the story, and then like this movie was inspired by the music, so it's just kind of like this big collaborative effort, it seems like, and I feel like that's really why the music feels like it's so much part of the movie. That was an interesting story that I felt like kind of backed up my feelings on the music in this movie. Excellent atmosphere. The music and the setting really, really complement the story. And there are tons of themes and situations in this movie that I really, really liked, and I'm not going to talk about all of them because some of them are a little more spoilerly than others. So just in general with the story, Weathering with You does an excellent job of showing and not telling. So this is a basic storytelling device, and it's something you definitely should do when you tell the story for certain aspects. And like, even though it's a basic thing, there are a lot of movies and books and TV shows, you know, that don't really do it very well. But Weathering with You definitely does a really good job of showing you things rather than telling you them. There are so many things that aren't explicitly expressed, but that you can figure out from like context clues, essentially, from the setting or little details about the characters, or like things that are hiding around in like the rooms or small scenes, flashes of things like that. A really good example of this is the relationship that Haruka has with his parents and the reason that he leaves his hometown and he like runs away to Tokyo, essentially. The only thing that Haruka says about him like leaving is he's saying that that place was so suffocating. He says that his hometown and his family were suffocating, and that's the only thing that we get. But from context clues and his appearance when you first meet him, and sort of some of his actions and things like that, and the way he responds to other people, is that you can really tell exactly the reason why he left his hometown and why he ran away and why he doesn't want to go back, and you know exactly what happens. I'm not going to say exactly what happens because spoilers. Do this without ever him going on some sort of exposition like soliloquy or whatever, or no flashbacks or like any sort of like real verbal clues. It's all with like details in character design, or the way a character is dressed, or like his actions or responses to things. Another thing about this movie that I really loved was this theme of selfish decisions. So this is just kind of like something that I thought of throughout the movie. There are characters in this movie that make selfish decisions. They make decisions without regard for any consequences or how it will affect other people. And now, as an American viewer who maybe you don't know a lot about Japanese culture or anything like that, maybe this won't strike you as like a big deal, because in American culture we are taught kind of to make decisions for ourselves, maybe without, and not 100% regarding the impact it will have on other people. At least the impact that it has on others, doesn't have as much weight in our decision-making process that it does maybe in Japanese culture. Generally speaking, Americans will make decisions for ourselves to achieve what they want, even if it means stepping on the toes of others. Now, while I am not like I'm just gonna preface this that I am American and I am not Japanese, but I do have studied some Japanese culture. I lived there for a little bit, even though that doesn't make me like an expert or anything like that, but I do know a few things. So Japanese culture and society is very much rooted in kind of like not inconveniencing other people. You can see this a lot in sort of in the way they refuse things. They don't outrightly refuse things or say no. You can see it in kind of like the orderly way that things are done. Like, you know, people line up for the train. Everybody generally takes their turn, like boarding something. There are very set rules and stuff like that that kind of try to accommodate everybody else. I think it's a very big thing about that a lot of people know about Japanese culture, is that they're very accommodating. Things are a lot of on time because they don't want to inconvenience others. This is like a general statement. I mean, obviously there's going to be like special cases and things like that, but generally Japanese society is like this. So generally speaking, they tend to make decisions and actions that benefit others, or considering what the effect on others will be, rather than like just solely focusing on themselves. I feel like in a lot of ways Weathering with You sort of challenges this idea a little bit. There are characters that make very selfish decisions in order for them to be happy, like decisions for their own happiness that have actually quite dire consequences for the rest of the people around them. I do think that this movie makes the case that the characters have made the correct decision because they are happy and they've kind of gotten what they wanted. I feel like in some ways, even though it's a very extreme metaphor, the movie is kind of saying, you know, maybe sometimes make a decision that makes you happy, even if you have to change the world for it. Another thing that this movie is about is Weathering with You is a movie about climate change. And like, I'm legitimately serious about this. It's like actually about climate change. So this movie takes place in a Tokyo where it is always raining. So throughout the movie I was thinking about like, oh, what if this actually happened? And I was like, oh, this could actually happen with some of the extreme weather that we've been seeing throughout the recent history of the world. So in Weathering with You, it is constantly raining and the weather is quite aggressive at times, and some of the things that the weather does is very aggressive. There are portions of the movie where the rain will pour down, like dump on the city or a specific area. Like it's like a tidal wave has fallen from the sky with how much water has rained down. A movie where the weather is different than it is normally and where the weather is very, very aggressive. So while I was thinking about all of this kind of like climate change allegory in this movie, during the featurette at the end of the movie where it kind of like they talk to Makoto Shinkai, it's kind of like a splicing of like specific interview footage and like things from press stuff, but he does specifically say that this movie is about climate change. He really talked about the aggressive weather and how it affects Japan. The past like several years, Japan has really taken a beating. There has been massive typhoons and earthquakes. Obviously the tsunami in 2011. It's experienced a lot of extreme weather, especially within the last 2 years, and especially in the time frame when this movie was being made. Typhoons have been a very big problem in Japan, and I feel like that is something that is kind of like apparent through this movie. Japan very much prides itself on its weather and its uniqueness, I guess, with its very distinct 4 seasons. There's a phrase you will hear very often, and it's Nihon wa yonshi ga aru kuni. So it's Japan is a country with 4 seasons. This movie kind of touches on what will happen to Japan if climate change continues the way it's going, and those 4 seasons disappear. If things keep on going the way that they are going, and we are not acknowledging climate change as much as we should be, then things like Japan's very like precious and a thing that they pride themselves on as a country, their very 4 distinct seasons, they're going to disappear. They're going to have rain forever. It was very interesting that I was thinking about it during the movie a lot, but it's very obvious, but I was thinking about it a lot during the movie, and then like in the future he's like, yo, this movie is about climate change. Even though there's this sort of like kind of doomsday message with it, with like all of the climate change commentary and some of the other things that happen in the film, it's a movie that like felt very, it's a complicated emotion, so it's a movie that felt very like sad and melancholy at times, because you feel for the characters and their situations, and kind of like you feel for this change that appears to be happening in Japan where it's always raining. But then it also kind of made me feel like happy and maybe hopeful a little bit, or maybe believed in the human spirit or something like that. It was because people were making decisions for themselves, and they were able to find happiness within a like new normal, have found a way to go on despite that. A kind of like a resilience of human spirit type of thing, even though like we should never get to the point that this movie hits on. You know, there's a very large like emotional climax in this movie, and I felt like I was going to cry, and I felt it coming, and then the jokers next to me decided to talk during it, so I kind of got my moment robbed from me, or like taken away from me, and I'm very upset, so don't talk in the movie theater. I feel like it wasn't like soul crushing, but it did feel very like melancholy at times, and but also very hopeful. So now we will make it to the elephant in the room. How does Weathering with You compare with Your Name? So Your Name is Makoto Shinkai's last film. It is a huge hit across the world, like amazing film, very, very good. I love it very much. And so especially like with kind of like after me posting on social media like about how like I like this movie, people are like, oh, how does it compare to Your Name? Or that's something I was thinking about also. Weathering with You is Shinkai's first movie since Your Name, so it's definitely going to have that conversation around it. I am even guilty of this. When going into it, I was thinking, oh, like it looks very similar to Your Name, and then also they use the same sort of music in it, so I was very worried that it would kind of like fall into this trap of being like, let's try to recreate the magic of our last hit kind of sort of situation, but first off, it doesn't do that, and second of all, that's a stupid thing to think. There are so many like directors that have a signature style, so I will take Hayao Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli. So when you see a Studio Ghibli movie, you know it's a Studio Ghibli movie. A lot of them have the same themes, and they even use the same composer. Joe Hisaishi is a composer that has composed for many a Studio Ghibli film, so why can't a director have the same sort of style and use the same composer for multiple movies? It's a totally acceptable thing to do. You know, when you see a Quentin Tarantino movie, you know it is a Quentin Tarantino movie. There are certain things that happen, there's a certain way that he creates his films and elements that he uses, so it's perfectly okay for Makoto Shinkai's movies to have a very similar look and feel to them. That's just kind of like style as a director, and kind of like a signature style. So of course we all have our preferences for when like a director releases a new movie, how does it compare to his other works? That's perfectly fine to do. Personally, I like Your Name more than Weathering with You, but that doesn't take anything away from Your Name and its merits as a like good movie, because Weathering with You is an absolutely brilliant movie. Like another masterpiece, like very, very, very good. I just personally like Your Name more. Honestly, I think Your Name is better, but that doesn't take away anything from Weathering with You. In the film, it's not fair to compare it to the director's previous works, like when you're making the decision if you want to go see it or not. I definitely think that Weathering with You is absolutely worth your time, and you should definitely go to see it if you have the chance. So that kind of brings us to the end of my review or discussion of this movie. I definitely think you should go see it if you can find a showing in your area. The stellar animation definitely deserves to be seen on a big screen, so if you can see it in a theater, I highly recommend it. And I only saw this movie in Japanese with English subtitles, so I cannot speak for the quality of the dub, but I have heard a little bit of the English trailer, and it sounds pretty good, so there's that. Weathering with You, great movie, full of emotion, expertly detailed and animated, great characters, really awesome music, and just very much well worth your time. That's it for my review. So if you've seen Weathering with You, let me know what you thought about it. Please try to keep your comments as spoiler-free as possible. This was a generally spoiler-free review, so I want to keep it very specific details kind of not in the comments. So yeah, just be respectful of other people who want to see the movie for themselves. But yeah, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you want to subscribe to my channel, you can go ahead and do that. I make videos about books and manga and sometime anime movie reviews. So yeah, subscribe if you want to. That is all I've got for you guys today. I'm Chrissy Lou. Till next time, matane!